Hey YouTube, it is Mark from This Cruise Life, and I am excited to come to you and share my entire review of a week on board the Norwegian Encore. I'm going to tell you all about what I loved, what I didn't love, and a couple of things that I hated. So stick around. The Norwegian Encore was launched in 2019 for Norwegian Cruise Lines. It's a Breakaway Plus class ship that can hold up to 4,200 passengers, and our sailing was almost completely sold out. It was the last sailing in the Alaska season, and so I flew up to Seattle for the experience. And I mentioned this in my first 24-hour review, but the embark process was not perfect. There were some hiccups. I don't think that the terminal in Seattle is built for a ship that size of Norwegian Encore, but once on board, the muster process was great. Loved it. Norwegian really routes you directly to that, so that's check out of the way. And then the first 24 hours was a whirlwind. As I mentioned in that first video, there was so much to love. There were a couple of things that went wrong. I'm not gonna, rehash those here, but what I do want to talk to you about is how the rest of the sailing went after that. So in typical This Cruise Life fashion, I'm going to talk about the food, the drinks, and the entertainment. So let's get hungry. Starting with the food, Norwegian Encore has a whole bunch of specialty restaurants that are part of the Breakaway Plus class ship. I'm gonna hit on a couple of my favorites, some that I really think you have to visit while you're there, and maybe a couple that you could pass up. So first and foremost, I absolutely loved the food at Food Republic. So it is their kind of Asian sushi restaurant. It has bowls and bibimbap and sushi and all of those sorts of things. We had a great time. I actually met a fellow solo cruiser and we enjoyed dinner there, and probably my favorite meal on board. Now, Free at Sea and Free at Sea Plus, I'm going to talk a little bit about both of those programs here in this video, but we had Free at Sea Plus, so I had a free meal voucher to use at the sushi restaurant, which was great because for the two of us, had we just eaten their a la carte, it would have been $140 some for sushi, raw fish. They didn't even have to cook this stuff. And so the pricing, the a la carte pricing at Norwegian's restaurants, I thought were some of the priciest out there. And so that's just something to be aware of. Now, the great news with Free at Sea, which they offer pretty much on every sailing, you get a free specialty dining coupon, essentially, if you will. And so I definitely chose to use my Free at Sea meal at Food Republic. Some of the other restaurants that we really loved on board, Le Bistro, the French-themed restaurant. Oh my goodness, it was so good. That lamb, you just needed a butter knife to cut that lamb off of the bone. The appetizers were just everything about Le Bistro, and they had the special champagne that you could only get at that restaurant. And so it was a great dining experience. A fast, casual dining experience that I absolutely loved, the Local. Oh my goodness, it is open 24 hours a day, and it has such a great menu. Now, the overnight menu is smaller than the dayside menu, but the fish and chips were really good. The sandwich, the burgers were amazing at the Local. It's just kind of like pub fare, kind of fast casual food, the nachos, the chili. I could keep going on and on. We ate at the Local probably more times than I can count, and it was every time we ate there, we absolutely enjoyed it. Of course, Norwegian Encore has a main dining room. In fact, it has several main dining rooms. It has two smaller ones that are more intimate for smaller parties, and then a larger Manhattan dining room, which is your typical main dining room on a cruise ship. And it also has the buffet, the Garden View Cafe, and it was outstanding. I mentioned in the first 24 hours that it reminded me of a Royal Caribbean buffet or a celebrity buffet. It was expansive, and there were so many different food options. And here's a cruise tip: walk around it a couple of times because I guarantee you will miss stuff. There was a whole Indian station that I didn't even realize was there, and it had some of the best Indian food on a cruise ship. But I ate Indian for breakfast, I ate it for lunch, I ate there every day. I really loved the variety at the Garden View Cafe. I loved the amount of options, and there was a bar right there. I didn't even have to leave the buffet to make use of my free at sea drinks package. It was great. And the main dining room that I mentioned, I didn't have a meal there, whether it was breakfast, lunch, or dinner, that I didn't truly enjoy. I recorded several food reviews and shorts about the food in the dining rooms. Just overall, I was really impressed with the food on board. Now, part of the reason why I was able to eat at so many specialty restaurants and not break the bank is I actually met a fellow solo traveler who has status with the line and had several free meal vouchers. And so he invited me to join him. Thank you, Thomas. If you're watching this, thank you so much. I enjoyed every single one of those dinners. That's one of the beautiful things about the Breakaway Plus class ships. You wouldn't need to eat in the main dining room once if you were a millionaire. Or if your channel was sponsored, hey, Norwegian Cruise Line, feel free to jump into the DMs. And in all seriousness, the food on board was awesome. Highly recommend it. And it compared, truly, it compared to Celebrity. It compared to Royals, specialty restaurants, and their Windjammer Cafe. It was really delicious. It was upscale. We'll talk about some of the things that I didn't love here in a little bit. Couple final things that I'll just mention about the food before I move on, and this is more about the design of the ship. I love how all of the restaurants are on the exterior of the ship. So while you're eating lunch, you've got beautiful views. While you're eating breakfast in the Garden View Cafe, if you're eating snacks down in the observation lounge, there are windows everywhere on this ship, which allowed me to take in the beautiful Alaskan scenery. And I can't leave the food section without mentioning two more things. The pizza on board, it was thin. I didn't think I was gonna like it. I loved it. I went to Garden View Cafe and I got that pizza multiple times throughout the week. And then the final thing I'll mention, thank you Norwegian Cruise Line for allowing a relaxed debark breakfast. So they had encouraged and invited people for breakfast into the main dining rooms. Overall, I would give the food on board Norwegian Encore 5 ships out of 5 ships. Let's move on to the drinks on board and what I loved about those. And there was a lot to love. I loved the Irish coffee on board. If you watch the first 24 hours on board, you know that I drank my weight in Irish coffees, just even in that first 24 hours. That continued throughout the rest of the cruise, and it didn't matter what bar you went to on board. It was absolutely the best drink on board. Trust me, if you're in Alaska, you're gonna want an Irish coffee. The champagne at Le Bistro, it's the best champagne on board. You can only get it there even on the super duper premium Free at Sea Plus drinks package. You can still only get it there. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. In addition, my unlimited Starbucks, wow. I am a Starbs fan. I've never really been a big fan of, brands on cruise ships, but I was on Norwegian Encore. There was never a long wait to get my venti iced chai with extra pump. We drank hot beverages there. We drank cold beverages there. We drank there all throughout the entire sailing. And so that was super great to have that feature on board. In terms of drinks that I got through my alcohol package, I loved the Maltings bar, the whiskey bar. There's the humidor smoking area right next to it. Just dark woods, just really a lovely space. The bartenders were fun and funny, and they made whatever you wanted. I've been trying the sustainably sourced gin neat from Norwegian Cruise Line. It is exclusive. You can only get it on a Norwegian cruise ship. Oh, it's gin. It's definitely... Oh, it smells delicious. Let's do a little bit of booze yoga. And let's go ahead and take a sip. Oh, super smooth. It is an upcharge if you're on the regular drinks package. It's $19 for a shot. Super smooth. I would say dangerous because you could drink a lot of this. Cheers. We are here at Maltings Whiskey Bar, and I got gin. Oops. Awesome absolutely delicious. And then we spent a ton of time at the observation lounge bar. I had my first Remy Martin. I had my first really upscale drinks because you know what? The Free at Sea Plus drinks package didn't have a limit. So sure, I'll take the $50 drink. For a $50 drink, you would think it would taste so much better. All kidding aside, we definitely got our value out of the Free at Sea Plus package. So there's two different packages. The Free at Sea package, which is the standard that comes with your booking, and that has a drink value package up to $10 to $12. I'll put it here. And then you've got the Free at Sea Plus, which has an unlimited drink value, and so that's how I got a $50 shot multiple times to get my money's worth. And so the Free at Sea Plus upgrade, it was about $300 for this sailing. What that also included, in addition to the premium cocktails, it included that unlimited Starbucks. It included the premium super great Wi-Fi. So it included a bunch more things in that package. And to me, it was absolutely worth every penny, especially with the Alaska sailing. I needed those beverages to warm me up. I've already mentioned the dedicated bar in the Ocean View Cafe, the buffet. I loved that. And they had little carts set up where you could use your card to get sodas or waters if you wanted. The other thing that I should mention about Free at Sea Plus, waters and sparkling water and still water are included in that package. They are not included in your Free at Sea package. I've never seen that before where water wasn't included. Let's jump into the entertainment. We needed all of that food to fuel everything that we did on board. Now, Norwegian Encore has several shows. The Choir of Man, which I had the opportunity to see multiple times. I posted a couple of short videos from that show. Just an amazing performance. We actually went back again. They're on the West End. They're touring. They just a phenomenal Broadway show. Truly was awesome. Honestly, that was really the only show that we saw in the main theater. So they played that several times throughout the week. They did a Beatles tribute. They did a couple of other shows that we didn't get a chance to see because there was just so much going on. Sailing through Alaska, this ship was amazing. If you get a chance to book Norwegian Encore or her Breakaway class sisters through Alaska, I think you will be happy. That observation lounge on deck 15, it wrapped around the entire front of the ship with floor-to-ceiling windows, and you just had stellar views. But Norwegian Encore doesn't stop there. They actually opened the bow of the ship as we were sailing through the fjord to get up close. I've got goosebumps. Some of the pictures, one, I've got goosebumps because it was freezing in the middle of the fjord, but two, because the views were some of the best I have ever seen in Alaska. Truly, to be up on the bow of the ship, low to the water, and right up front with no obstruction, nothing obstructing your view was honestly, I count that as part of the entertainment because it was just such an amazing day. And the wraparound decks, those were also another amazing feature on the ship. So you can walk all the way around on the outside. Now, the amount of outdoor space for viewing of Alaska is awesome. Now, on the top deck, not a lot of folks were out on the top deck, believe it or not. There wasn't as much space up there because you've got a laser tag center and you've got a go-kart track and you've got the beach club, up there. You've got all of these additional pay spaces. So the space up there for viewing was less, but you can't talk about Norwegian Encore entertainment without talking about the go-kart track. The solos coordinated a group round and raced around the go-kart track. You've got the laser tag. I didn't see the laser tag open at all during this Alaska sailing, but to be fair, it was cold and it was outside. We did not use the water slides, but some of those water slides on Norwegian Encore look truly amazing. If I were in the Caribbean, if I were in a warm destination, I promise you, I would have been on that water slide multiple times. So lots of cool entertainment up on deck. I'm going to sound a little like a broken record in this full review video, but I loved the silent disco. I love a silent disco on really any cruise ship that I've been on. The only ship that we've been on recently that didn't have one was Virgin Voyage's Valiant Lady. If you're listening, Richard Branson, go ahead and add that to your ship's entertainment offerings because we had such a blast. Now, there were several solos that were traveling that had never done a silent disco before, so it was their first one. Now, I didn't love, and I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I didn't love how on Norwegian, the silent disco, as you moved around the dance floor, that's what controlled the channels changing. It was still a blast, so it didn't even make my didn't love list because I still loved it so much, and we had so much fun. And the 80s party down in the social club, the 80s party was so much fun. Oh my goodness. We danced to Whitney, we danced to MJ, we danced to just all of the classics that you would expect to hear at an 80s party. So the social club always had the nightclub going on. We went down there pretty much every night. There were several nights we shut it down. The social club also had the comedians. We went to the comedians. They were okay. But just there was always something going on at night on the ship, which I was really pleasantly surprised by. The reason I chose this voyage so late in the season, as a guy who lives in Phoenix and doesn't love the cold, that might surprise you, but I chose this for the Northern Lights. And I will tell you, we were not disappointed. On 3 or 4 of the nights, we got to see the skies dancing and light up. My friend Eddie, he took some amazing photos that, it was absolutely gorgeous. The sky was filled with color. Now, it was cold watching those lights, so I do, cruise tip, pack some earmuffs, pack a scarf, pack some gloves, because you will need it up on deck. The final entertainment thing that I will mention, it's a huge shout out to Monica for helping coordinate, and all of the Facebook coordinators for helping coordinate a meetup of the Facebook group. It was so much fun. It was probably the most coordinated Facebook group that I've seen in my sailings. And so it was a ton of fun. We made gift baskets for crew members so that they could share it with their teams. And I got to meet so many folks through that experience. So Monica, thank you so much for coordinating that. Now I'm going to share a couple of miscellaneous things, rapid fire, that I absolutely loved. I talked about the wraparound deck. The waterfront was a great space on board. I loved that the casino had its own non-smoking casino. You had your casino in the main area, and then you had another room that you actually had to, hit that button to get into, and the doors opened and closed, and it kept all of the smoke inside there. We never smelled smoke as we were walking through that area, which was awesome. Small design things that the ship has done, the little fish swimming in the carpet that all face forward, so you know when you get into those hallways, those long hallways, which way is forward. Like, there were those sorts of design tweaks that I really loved, and I just loved the feel of the ship. It's a beautifully designed ship. The individual spaces, the restaurants have all of the waterfront viewing. You can tell it is a new cruise ship, and it's beautiful. And the Haven, the exclusive area on board Norwegian Cruise Line ships, just an absolute gorgeous space. I had the opportunity, thank you Norwegian Cruise Lines for inviting me in to do a tour of that space. I'll post that separately because I got to walk through the entire space. Absolutely beautiful. If you can get a good deal on it, I would recommend checking out the Haven. I didn't get a chance to dine in the Haven restaurant, but I'll tell you, those were the cleanest windows on that entire cruise ship. You pay for really exclusivity, you pay for service, and you pay for beauty. The design and look of the Haven is just absolutely gorgeous. Couple last things that I'll mention in the love category. I loved my stateroom. I talked about that in the first 24 hours, and I did a full stateroom tour. So go ahead and check those out. But it was quiet, it was in a great location, and there was plenty of space for a solo traveler like me. Loved that. I also really enjoyed the fact that this sailing was less of a party atmosphere than I've seen on other lines. Now, part of that could be it was an Alaska sailing, but it was just a chill vibe. And where there were parties, like the 80s party or the silent disco, those were always a blast, but it was just a really chill group, and I love that. A couple things about getting to the ship and leaving the ship. Seattle. I love that I was able to take the train from the airport down to Pike's Place, the fish market, and then walk from there. It was about a 10-minute walk to the cruise terminal. That was awesome and saved me a whole bunch of money. I'm going to actually do an article about that so you can get there yourself. Ubers were running between $30 to $50, and so the $3 train fare definitely was a great money-saving trick and helped pay for my free at Sea Plus upgrade. and then leaving the ship, they've got something called Port Valet. Have you used this? If you haven't, I highly recommend it. You register for it on their website before your cruise, and they deliver the night before you get off the ship. They deliver special tags, and they take those bags for free. They take those all the way to the airport, and they check them to your airport, and you pick up your bags when you get home, wherever it is you're flying to. It was such a phenomenal experience. I absolutely loved it. What it allows you to do, and the reason why Seattle does this is because then we're like, oh, well, we don't have bags. Let's just go walk around Seattle and do some shopping. It's a brilliant idea, Seattle, Miami, and others. If you're listening, offer this service. It was awesome, and it allowed us to spend some more time in Seattle. Two last quick things that I absolutely loved about Norwegian Encore and the week on board. The solo experience, I mentioned it in the first 24 hours, but it continued throughout the rest of the voyage. It was awesome. Norwegian does an amazing job connecting solo travelers to each other. They had daily meetups. We went to dinner multiple times together. There were events focused on solos, the solo lounge, solo cabins. It was just an awesome experience for a solo traveler. I would absolutely sail Norwegian Cruise Line solo again. It was great. In fact, I've stayed in touch with multiple of the solo travelers that we've met. I'm going to visit one of them in New York City here coming up soon. We've talked about booking other cruises with others of the solos. Just really, you can tell that Norwegian is the leader in solo cabins and solo category staterooms out in the cruise industry. So great work there, Norwegian. And did I mention how much I loved the local? I know I already did, but it's worth repeating. The local is one of my favorite casual dining stops that I have found on a cruise ship, partly because it was open all the time. I loved the fact that I could go there at 2 a.m. after drinking plenty of water at the nightclub, and I could have just some greasy food before I went to bed. Trust me, Norwegian Cruise Lines, the local, really helped me out on several occasions on this cruise. So thank you so much. Before I move into what I didn't love, I did something different this time that I've never done before. I actually asked the Facebook group for this cruise. Remember how I said it was so awesome and so coordinated? I asked the Facebook group what they loved, and I asked them to weigh in. And so shout out to so many of the cruisers who responded. I'm actually going to give you some of the things that they loved, so it's not just my words. The White Pass train in Skagway, Alaska. If you ever get a chance to go to Skagway, check that out. Everyone that did that had amazing things to say, and the pictures and videos were iconic. Highly recommend that from the Facebook group. A couple folks called out the Beatles show, which unfortunately I didn't get to see. I'll catch it next time. Don't worry. Whales. We saw whales jumping and breaching in front of the ship, on the side of the ship. Now, that is not guaranteed. I cannot guarantee you will see whales if you sail Norwegian Encore to Alaska. But we got to see it, and it was pretty awesome. The weather for the last week of October, the last sailing for the cruise season, it was sunny every single day. And multiple people called out how lucky we were and how happy they were about the weather. It was cold. Of course it was cold. It's Alaska in the end of October, but it was absolutely beautiful. Glacier Bay, sailing through Glacier Bay, sailing through the fjords, truly one of the most beautiful places I've been. And again, opening up the bow of the ship, being up close to the glacier, super cool. And then two last ones. Several people called out all of the new friends that they met on board. Several of the solos commented how great that experience was. That totally, I met so many people on this sailing. It just warms my heart that I am not alone in feeling that. And then several folks called out the spa and the Haven. Those were upcharge items, so I didn't get to experience those, and you may not get to experience those unless you have those packages, but those were called out as just really enjoyable experiences. So a lot to love about the Norwegian Encore, about Alaska, about the ship, about the itinerary, just so much to love. And of course, to all of you solos out there, Thomas and Eddie and Monica, I don't want to risk leaving someone out. Zach and Allie and Michelle and Pat and the other Michelle and the other Monica, and there were so many amazing friends that I've made on board, and I am super excited to sail with you again somewhere on the ocean. So let's jump into what I didn't love about the Norwegian Encore, and this might impact your decision on whether you book this ship. I mentioned this in the first 24 hours, but the bag drop and that Seattle terminal, I didn't love that experience. I've had much smoother and much better embark processes and experiences on other cruise lines. I think about Virgin Voyages. From the time we dropped our bags to the time we were on the ship, it was 20 minutes. That was not this experience. There were lines down the street and confusion amongst the crew and confusion amongst passengers of where to go. One crew member yelled at a group of passengers that they were going the wrong way. It was kind of a mess on embark. Didn't love that. Once on board, I didn't love, and I know this is going to be controversial, I didn't love Sugarcane Mojito Bar. Not only did they refuse to sub out the premium liquors despite having the Free at Sea Plus upgrade, they muddled down the ingredients so much that you ended up with just green stuff in your teeth all week. I didn't love the mojitos. I know there are a lot of people that love that venue on board, and I'm glad that they love it. It was not my favorite on board. I also didn't love that Maltings Bar. I mentioned it earlier. I loved it. I didn't love that there were several times when those doors opened that you would get a waft of smoke. Now, it wasn't all the time, and it wasn't terrible like I've seen on other ships, but it still kind of took away from the experience, especially if you are sensitive to smoke. One of the restaurants that I was most looking forward to, Onda by Scarpetta, their Italian concept, that was our least favorite meal on board. Now, it started off having the best bite of food of all of 2023, so I will give you that Onda by Scarpetta. That risotto brought a tear to my eye. It was so good. But the rest of the meal just let us down completely. The pastas were overcooked. They were gummy. The pizza was overdone. Everything that we ordered, we didn't really enjoy. And I sailed with the individual that I had mentioned earlier who gifted me a couple of meals. He's been on many Norwegian Cruise Line sailings. This was his least favorite meal as well. The food just wasn't great, and the service was okay. It's in a wide open space, so it was super loud. It was a disappointment. When I sail on Norwegian again, I will not go back to Onda by Scarpetta. Again, I didn't love it. Your mileage may vary. Speaking of the specialty restaurants, there were several items in those restaurants that were just okay. In fact, the steakhouse, Cagney's, that was another one that was just okay. The meat was really rough. And we talked to a couple of tables around us, and they joked. They were like, this cow must have been real tough. And so there were it just wasn't a great experience. The appetizers, those were really good. But the actual main course was just okay. It's odd because despite I'm super glad I had the chance to try all the specialty restaurants, but I actually think I liked the main dining room better than the specialty dining. The main dining room, there wasn't a single dish that wasn't a hit. In fact, the local, there wasn't a dish there that I didn't absolutely love. And so the specialty dining, I'm glad that I had it, but I don't know that I would buy the unlimited package or the 3-meal, 5-meal. Having a couple of meals, awesome. Definitely going back to Food Republic, but overall, I just thought the food was okay in the specialty dining. Now, you compare that to a Valiant Lady, a Virgin Voyages, where the specialty restaurants are all included. That food blew these specialty restaurants away. I mentioned this in my first 24 hours, but there are dead ends around the ship. Now, after a day, you get used to those, so it wasn't like I was running into dead ends regularly. And after the doors are open and stateroom access are open, you've got hallways to go up and down the ship, and so it's really not an issue. But that first day, I was a little bit annoyed by the dead ends. Speaking of my stateroom and the staterooms, I didn't see my room steward once. I take that back. I saw my room steward when I had my Do Not Disturb sign on, and he knocked and said, "Do you want service?" I said, "Well, I'm in here recording a video." He's like, "Well, it's now or you're not getting service today." What? Okay, so I left the room so he could service it. Another time, my Do Not Disturb light was on. He knocked to drop off the daily piece of paper. He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see your Do Not Disturb on." I was like, what's the point of this? I didn't see him the entire sailing. Now, the Facebook group had mixed experiences with room stewards on board, I will tell you that. But I wouldn't recommend, I'll tell you right now, if it were coming down to the room steward, which it doesn't, but if it were coming down to that, I would absolutely not recommend Norwegian Cruise Lines. That was probably the worst room steward experience I've had. Now, I had towels, And yes, he woke me up from a nap, and yes, he
interrupted me.
A recording a video when Do Not Disturb was clearly on the door. That was a nuisance and annoying. And it's also annoying that they have the highest service charges of any cruise line out there, to know that the service was just lackluster. Didn't love that. In fact, with all this energy, it's kind of crossing into the hated. Can you tell? Speaking of differences between other cruise lines we've experienced, no one on board called me by name, except the guys who would write my name on the Starbucks cup. They called me by name because it was right there, but no one acknowledged you by name. No one recognized you on the ship. That was a different experience for me than I'm used to. I mentioned some of the design decisions of the ship, like the top deck space, small for what it is with all of the upcharge things that are up there. They put the shops in the middle of the walkways, and so it created all sorts of pinch points. So some of the ways that they make money and upcharge people, those actually had an impact on the overall experience. I mentioned it, I can't imagine sailing this to the Caribbean because of how small that Lido or that upper deck space is. And it got to be a joke by the end of the week. Oh, is that going to be an upcharge? There are so many upcharges on this cruise line. It was actually kind of surprising. Oh, if you want that, it's an upcharge. If you want this, it's an upcharge. If you want that, like that, it felt more nickel and dimey than any line that I've been on. Now, I get it. That seems to be the trend that the industry is going in, but it really shone through on Norwegian. Lastly, in the didn't love, I mentioned that I loved my stateroom as a solo traveler, and I stand by that. I can't imagine booking this stateroom with 4 people. This stateroom can support 4 people. There was one single closet door that my clothes fit in. I can't even, I mean, Rocky and I could make it work because we've made some interesting staterooms work over the years, but it was a small stateroom for 2 people, let alone 4 people. So keep that in mind. Again, you can watch the full review here. Loved it, but I didn't love that if it was a 4-person stateroom. In fact, I probably would have hated it. Speaking of things that I hated, there are only a couple, honestly, on Norwegian Encore that I absolutely hated. And one of those, honestly, was the Free at Sea Plus package. Now, I loved the package. I loved all of the amenities, but I hated how disjointed it was from Norwegian Cruise Line headquarters to actual execution on the ship. I mentioned this in the first 24 hours. The servers had no idea about, the free bottle of wine with dinner. I didn't have a single free bottle of wine that entire week because no one could figure out, okay, which wine is included, which isn't. Again, I got glasses of wine with dinner. It was fine. I'm not complaining about that, but it was so disconnected from what the plan states versus what's actually delivered on board. So cruise tip, study Free at Sea Plus. If you're gonna make the upgrade, understand what wines are included, understand what champagnes are included. In fact, Monica one night ordered a bottle in the main dining room and she said, is this included? Yep, absolutely. She looked at her folio and there was a charge for the bottle. Well, no, that specific bottle wasn't included. Just like the first night when I ordered a glass of wine, no, that specific wine isn't included. I have no idea what is actually included and not included, and I hated that. I also hated the fact that whenever I tried to upgrade the spirit in my cocktail, I was told, no, that recipe's already set. And then I'd watch them make the drink. Just swap out the liquor. It felt a little bait and switchy. Now, I ordered Remy Martins and I ordered all sorts of things. Here's my other cruise tip to make up for it. I just ordered one of the top shelf drinks, neat, as a chaser, and then I added it to my own cocktail. So even though they couldn't make it for me, I still managed to make sure that I got some additional benefit out of the package because you can order 2 drinks at a time. Now, I shouldn't have had to do that, Norwegian Cruise Lines. I really shouldn't have had to do that. Headquarters, communicate with your ships and make that connection, and don't put me as the passenger in the middle of that. Hated it. I also hated the Ketchikan port experience. So Norwegian docks at their own port, which is miles away from anything else, and you have to catch a shuttle into town. Well, another Norwegian ship happened to port when we did, and we both made way for the queue to get to the one shuttle, the shuttle bus that they have running to the town. I waited in that line for an hour. An hour of my port experience was eaten up. By the time I got to actually Ketchikan, I had 45 minutes before I had to get back to the shuttle because of our early departure. Meanwhile, the other ship, the Norwegian Sun, was in port until like 6 p.m. Debark them a little bit later so that those of us that are leaving at noon or 1 have a bit more time in the port. I hated that experience. It wound you through a gift shop. Literally for an hour, you wound through a gift shop. It was a terrible experience, and they did it because they didn't want to port in Ketchikan and they didn't want to pay all of the taxes and port fees. They have their own place where they can make a whole lot of money. Hated that experience. And this final one is a nit. I realize it is a small thing in the grand scheme of things, but the soap dispensers and paper towel dispensers in the public bathrooms never worked. They never worked. They were out. You regularly saw people just leave the bathroom from opening the doors because they couldn't get soap from the dispensers. I recorded a little video. It's like this in every restroom on board Norwegian Encore. So as a result, the door handle in every bathroom is wet. So even if you use your shirt to open it, your shirt is now wet, which is absolutely disgusting. And, oh, by the way, there are no other dispensers. There's no other way to get a paper towel. Absolutely a hate on this ship. I mean, when I say I hated that experience, I hated it. It was terrible. Norwegian, please, it's a brand new cruise ship. Fix it. Okay, that's it. Those are the 3 things that I hated about the experience. Again, if you've watched any of our other reviews, you know that there are things we love, there are things we didn't love, and there are always a couple of things that we hated. And that is true with truly any vacation that you go on. Overall, it was an amazing vacation, and I am so glad that I had the chance to sail on Norwegian Encore and my first Norwegian sailing. In fact, on the way home, I called Rocky and I said, hey, is there any way you could get me on this Norwegian ship that leaves tomorrow from Miami? Yes, I was all ready to book another solo sailing on Norwegian. That's how great of a time that I had on board. And so while there were some things that I didn't love and a couple things that I hated, overall, the experience was phenomenal. While I do think Norwegian made some choices in terms of upcharges that would impact the overall guest experience, the laser tag, the go-karts, the beach club, all of those sorts of things, on an Alaska sailing, it really didn't impact me at all. And so really, the only thing that was a little bit of a nuisance were the shops in the middle when they would run sales and it was a pinch point to get through the ship. But honestly, other than that, I think it was a fine experience. And here's my question. How many times are you going to play laser tag on a ship to take up all of that space? How many times are you going to go on the go-kart track? And maybe there are some folks that are out there that's all they do all week on this ship. Great. But the reality is those spaces, especially on an Alaska sailing, those spaces were never utilized. What a waste. And again, I'm excited to try this ship out in the Caribbean to see kind of what that experience looks like, but it just seemed like a waste of space. The food truly for me was the highlight of my week on Norwegian Cruise Lines. And you heard me mention it, there were a couple of specialty spots that I absolutely loved. But what I really loved, I loved the Garden View Cafe, the buffet area. I loved the main dining rooms, and I loved the local. Those were the spaces that I absolutely loved the most, and I didn't have to pay for any one of those. And so keep that in mind as you're thinking about this voyage. Food is good. Food is good, and the included food is really good. While the drinks package had some annoyances, overall, y'all, I didn't go thirsty. Not once. My only big recommendation is to research the package ahead of time so you know exactly what's included. Loved the Starbucks. Loved the ability to order 2 drinks at a time. That is so much better than Carnival's. Nope, 1 drink and then wait 5 minutes and get your next drink. I loved being able to order 2 drinks at a time. I'd get my mojito and I'd get my top shelf liquor and I would have the both of them. I'd get my Remy Martin and I'd get something else. It was awesome. I absolutely, don't you worry, I got my money's worth out of that upgrade. So just go in eyes wide open and know exactly what it is that's included in your plan. And I promise you as well, you will not go thirsty. Hopefully this quick review gives you some insight into what it's like to cruise Norwegian and to sail on the Norwegian Encore to Alaska. Overall, like I said, it was an epic week. I'm so glad I had the chance to do it, and I can't wait to sail like a Norwegian again next time with Rocky so that he can experience what it's like. If you have any questions, as always, don't hesitate to drop those down below. Happy to answer. We respond to every single question and comment, so drop those in the comments below. And of course, if you found something in here that was helpful, a cruise tip, information about food, or those Irish coffees, hit that like button, subscribe, ring that notification bell, and until the next video, we'll see you next time.